Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the third in our Local by ICT Insight webinars. This webinar is going to be all about licensed software, and we are joined by representatives from Codify and Datacom to give us a really deep dive into licensed software. Now, I am talking rather slowly as everybody starts to come into the meeting. We do like to start on time here at Local Buy, so we're going to kick off with some content about Local Buy to start with. Then Dan, who is the category manager for our ICT arrangements, is going to talk a little bit about his arrangements before we move across to our wonderful suppliers who are here to talk more technically about licensed software. Now, because your microphones and cameras are off, we invite you, if you have any questions at all during the presentation, to post them in the Q&A portal, which is in your top toolbar of Teams. Pop them in there. We will keep an eye on them. And if there's any questions that need to be asked, we will do that live or have a big Q&A session at the end of the presentation. You will be provided with a copy of the recording and of the slide deck after the presentation in a couple of days' time when our marketing team have prepared it for us. And you feel free to share that with any of your colleagues who were unable to attend today. So let's kick off. First of all, I would like to make some introductions to the Local Buy representatives here. My name is Emma Peters. I'm the Head of Engagement for Local Buy. Between myself and my team, our role is to account manage or look after, as I like to call it, all of the Queensland and Northern Territory based councils. I'm also joined by our Category Manager for ICT and Telco, Mr. Daniel O'Donnell. So who is Local Buy? Local Buy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Local Government Association of Queensland, also known as the LGAQ. The LGAQ created Local Buy all the way back in 2001 to assist councils streamline procurement. And we're going to talk a little bit about why councils needed that help in just a moment. We are a profit for purpose organisation. We return any profit that we make over and above our operating costs to our owner, the LGAQ, who use the funds to provide awesome member services to Queensland councils. And we also work in partnership with Legant, the Local Government Association of the Northern Territory, to provide procurement solutions for NT councils. And I know that we have a few NT councils represented here today. So thank you very much for joining us. So why do councils need help with procurement? Well, the majority of councils in Queensland operate under the Queensland default procurement rules. So as a council officer, you can't just go out and buy stuff willy-nilly on behalf of your council. You have to abide by the rules that are set down in the Local Government Regulation 2012. And they say if your procurement activity is between 15,000 and 200,000, you have to get 3 written quotes. If your procurement activity is what is considered a large-sized contractual arrangement, that's over 200,000, you must perform a full and open tender. Those thresholds are slightly lower in the Northern Territory. So your tender threshold kicks in at $150,000 in the Northern Territory, and there are your default rules on this particular slide. So where does Local Buy fit into this? Oh, first of all, let's talk a little bit about tendering. Now, tendering, if you've ever had to go out and put together a tender and run a tender process on behalf of your organisation, you will know that's not a 5-minute job. It's pretty long and arduous. You can't buy anything quickly because it has to be out to market for a full 21 days, and you have to evaluate all of the tender responses, and it's a public tender. You don't know how many responses you are actually going to get. We've estimated the cost of tendering can be up to $20,000 per tender for councils to put together. So Local Buy fits into this by having an exemption under the local government regulation in the NT and an exception in the local government regulation in Queensland that says if you're engaging a supplier through a local buy pre-qualified supplier arrangement, you do not have to do tenders, even if the amount of your procurement activity is over the tender threshold. We have 54 pre-qualified supplier arrangements which help you procure goods and services without having to go through the rigmarole of doing that full and open tender process. Now, there's a couple of ways you can engage directly by engaging a supplier using the local buy contract number on your purchase order, or you can use our awesome online procurement platform, which is called Vendor Panel. I am doing some vendor panel training in a couple of weeks' time, so if you'd like to find out a bit more, please don't hesitate to register. Now, a couple of key achievements before I pass across to Dan. Local buy are likely to hit the magic $1 billion being procured through our arrangements this financial year. So we have about 279 different organisations who use local buy, and this slide needs to be updated, about 4,500 suppliers across our 54 pre-qualified supplier arrangements. So there you go. There was a wee snapshot of local buy and our place in local government procurement. I would now like to pass across to Dan, who's going to talk a little bit more about his specific ICT arrangements.
Thanks, Emma. Well, the ICT arrangement LB308 replaced a earlier version of the ICT panel in 274 and incorporated the services from the previous Smart Cities Technologies arrangement. So it's a, I suppose, end-to-end ICT arrangement from everything from, well, funnily enough, the topic of today, software, hardware, Microsoft licenses, SaaS, PaaS, and also the delightful areas of compliance and enforcement technologies that bring our ratepayers those delightful little pieces of paper on the windshields when they overstay in parking bays. The arrangement's halfway through its lifespan. We're in the process of extending it for an additional 3 years, which will leave a remaining 3-year term through to 2031. As I said, it covers everything from hardware to software to cybersecurity to emerging technologies to IoT to general security systems. So it covers, quite the length and breadth of government ICT needs. And the benefits of it is, as Emma's alluded to, is that it streamlines the procurement process. It takes gives back time in your life that's otherwise lost through procurement processes. It's cost effective, and importantly, the ICT arrangement provides, particularly in the space of licensing, very competitive pricing through negotiated rates, and it ensures cost saving for not only local government, but different levels of government and universities and other eligible customers in the not-for-profit and charity sector. And it also provides access to specialised vendors with proven expertise. The panel also provides a number of benefits in procuring licensed software. As I touched on, cost efficiency and value assurance, but also importantly, compliance and risk mitigation. So it's pre-vetted suppliers helping ensure that the software meets regulatory security and licensing requirements, reducing legal and operational risks. And once again, it allows a great deal of time saving and also streamlined procurement with providing you competitive rates for suppliers such as Datacom and Codify to make life easier so that you're able to go on to, I guess, the more important or other duties within your daily tasks. Now, rather than my dulcet tones. I think it's better to pass on to the experts that actually know and can provide you a great deal of detail with regard to how you can benefit from their different products and services. So I will pass across to David and Alex, where they will discuss the complexities of the procurement channels and how they influence the license partner selection, and also um, new Microsoft SKUs as well. So without any further ado, I pass across to David and Alex.
I think you're up first, Alex. Is that right? I'll drive the slides.
Oh, yeah. So hello, everyone. Today we'll talk about how to navigate under and over licensing with Microsoft, since they keep evolving the SKU landscape, and especially now considering recent changes with Teams getting unbundled from the Microsoft 365 suites. Microsoft licensing was always and is very complex. And so with constant updates to SKU structures, namings, and bundles, it's easy to either get under-licensed, leaving users without essential capabilities or security features, or more commonly over-licensed, which makes you pay for a lot more than what you actually need. The one major change that happened recently, as mentioned before, is the separation of Microsoft Teams from the E3 and E5 suites. And this shift means that Teams is no longer automatically included in those enterprise plans. Organizations now need to license it separately, typically using a SKU called Teams Enterprise, which is an add-on. This change is applicable to new contracts only, but something to be aware of if you're changing resellers, for example. Many organizations tend to over-license due to the lack of visibility into actual usage. So, for example, you might have users assigned E5 licenses when all they need is an E3 or even an F3 license for frontline workers. And these mismatches can cost a lot of money and add complexity to your environment. So best ways to avoid this is do an auditing of your current licensing against actual usage. You can use tools like in Microsoft Admin Center, there's quite a few information that's available there, or you can also use third-party platforms like CoreView or License Dashboard. Those can help you identify inactive or over-provisioned licenses, as well as inactive users that have licenses. The second thing is you need to educate your IT teams about those SKU structure changes. That way, because Microsoft is now offering more modular options, like separating teams or having specific Defender SKU bundles or Viva add-ons, there's more flexibility, but there's also more room for misalignment if the team that's procuring those licenses is not up to date. The third thing you can do is adopt a role-based licensing model, match the license types to job functions. For example, not every user needs to have a full E5. You can segment users by department, seniority, or usage patterns, and assign licenses accordingly using group licensing. It's a straightforward way to optimize costs without compromising functionality. And then finally, what you can do is stay in contact with your Microsoft account team or reseller, because they will often have early insights into roadmap changes and promotions that can help you transition smoothly and cost effectively. To wrap up, basically, Microsoft SKU changes like unbundling team reflect a shift of Microsoft towards a more customizable licensing, which is great, but it also means you need to be more proactive and strategic than ever before. So auditing, educating, aligning licenses to roles, and staying informed, we can both avoid under or over licensing and make the most of the flexibility that Microsoft is now offering.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about the Microsoft channel model for everyone. It's an interesting thing that I think a lot of people aren't really familiar with when they talk about buying from Microsoft, but they have a few specific ways that they engage with the market. There's benefits and drawbacks from each of those, and I just wanted to touch on that and sort of, I guess, give you a few of the tips and tricks that I would use if I was a savvy procurement officer at a council. So, I mean, broadly speaking, there's three buckets that Microsoft interface with the market with. There's the front-end retail SKU, so that would be you at home, or maybe you're a small business of a few staff and you're going to transact directly with Microsoft. Typically, you'll go along to, if you're buying Microsoft Azure, for example, you'll rock up to the portal, punch in your credit card. It'll all be post-billed onto your credit card and buy what you need. So the target segment for that is well below the size of any council here. So that's individuals, like real small micro businesses of maybe 5 employees and that sort of stuff. And for that, you'll get no support, no programmatic engagement with Microsoft. If you did need tech support, you've got to go and buy a support plan over and above the products and services that you buy. At the other end of the scale, I'll just jump over to enterprise before we drill down into CSP and the changes that are coming there that I think are very relevant to all the councils. At the other end, you have Microsoft Enterprise Agreements. So that's where a customer will enter into a direct commercial arrangement with Microsoft or via a large account reseller. And typically, the rule of thumb that Microsoft will give you is if you're buying services through Azure, you're going to be spending, say, $80,000 US a month or more, and typically over 1,000 seats of licensing. Funnily enough, even though you have that high-end level of engagement with Microsoft, you'll still get no support. And the expectation is that you'll buy a Microsoft Premier Support contract or something else. You receive your invoicing from Microsoft. They'll provide you with some sort of, you'll get access to incentives along the way at that level. But a lot of, I have to admit, a lot of what you'll get out of them is highly programmatic. So if you're thinking that somebody is going to ring you up and understand intimately that you're halfway through a rollout of Tech One and that they could do this and that to support you, you'll be a bit disappointed. The sorts of engagement you'll get out of it will be, typically delivered by some sort of scale operation, typically regionally out of Asia or similar to that. So that's how the larger agreements work. But then obviously, there's the extreme end of enterprise where you're Rio Tinto or something. That's a whole different ballgame, which is sort of well out of the discussion for today. In the small to medium corporate segment in the middle, Microsoft has what's called their cloud solution provider push, and this is probably where most councils would reside. So you're above the micro business, but you're below that 80K US a month, and you're somewhere up to, but not over 1,000 seats. Now, in the cloud solution provider model, it's an indirect model where you would be engaging with a company like Codify, we're a CSP, and you would come to us for procure services. We would provision them for you. You would come to us for support. We're contractually obligated to provide you with support, and then all of our billing systems back end into Microsoft systems, and we'd present you with an invoice. Within the CSP space, there are two sub-segments. There's a direct and tier one, which is the higher end, more elite level of partner. And then there's the indirect and tier two, which is the more low end. And I've sort of shown what the barrier, the bars are between those two. Tier one's direct, transact directly with Microsoft. It's quite onerous, the amount of work that you have to do to maintain tier one status. And when that program first came out, if you go back to sort of 2017, 2018 type timeframe, if you could write your own name, you could become a tier one CSP. And Microsoft realized that they probably let too many people into that program. And then over time, they've just been dialing up the pain on partners to transition more people out of tier one into tier two. And as you can see, that just from the revenue qualifiers between the two, the difference is quite extreme. What's coming down the line? Sorry, I just lost my mouse pointer. What's coming down the line is a lot of changes to do with what's required to maintain tier one status. So revenue targets, as I mentioned on that previous slide, going from 300K up to 1 mil US in annual commit. The requirements from Microsoft are really onerous. Now, from you as a procurement person, there is really no difference between the two. Typically, you will be paying the same price from two different CSPs, a tier one and a tier two. So logically, if I was a savvy procurement person, I would be asking the sorts of questions about, firstly, what tier they have as a CSP with Microsoft, and secondly, start drilling down into what your support escalation path is. Because if you deal with the tier one, we've got a back-to-back support contract with Microsoft. You come to us for support. If we can't deal with it, we will automatically escalate that directly up to a resource at Microsoft where we're account managed. So we've got a very fast time to fix. But a tier two who's transacting through a large account reseller, you'll come to them for support. they will probably provide you with a lower level of support to start with. Then they will have to go to their licensing account reseller, which will be offshore support, and then you'll fight tooth and nail with that offshore support provider to then go to Microsoft. So I'd be looking at that as probably a big button to press on in terms of like what the what the requirements are from your providers. And then there's also onshore offshore, because sovereignty is obviously really important to government organisations and GOCs. So if you are going to a lower level scale play support offering, like where does your data go, and is it handled offshore, is it handled onshore? And then the last and probably the most important thing I think that you should get from any provider of anything, whether it's software licensing or anything at all, is continuity of service. When you ring up, you want to know that they know that you are XYZ City Council, and that you're in the middle of a big rollout of a system and can provide you with sort of immediately contextually relevant support, as opposed to just being another person in a queue and another ticket to process where you're having to restate your context at the start of every call. So they're the changes coming. I think if you'll be in that CSP model for sure, and I would just make sure that there's no reason you shouldn't be dealing with tier 1 providers when you select your partners to work with. And that's us for today. Thank you.
Thanks for that, David and Alex. It was quite insightful, and I think it's quite handy to be given a perspective, or I guess an understanding to councils and other customers about, I guess, the complexities of what to consider when developing their specs or considering the requirements for their licenses. So, if I can. We'll just jump across to Sandy and Carl from Datacom, and they're going to, I guess, convey to us, the challenges on, and the realities of, as customers, sometimes how many licenses are hiding in your inbox, and whether we're giving them the full consideration, particularly with regard to maintaining or purchasing. So without any further ado, I happily pass over to Sandy and Kyle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. We have decided to talk to you about software licensing in general, but more importantly, how we go about maintaining that software licensing and renewing that over time. We've found over many years that can be problematic, so we are going to talk through some of the problems that we see, what good looks like, and then how Datacom can assist you in that process as well. So my name's Sandy Bouch. I have been in the IT industry for about 20 years. My first 5 years was working with local councils, then on to Gartner, and the last 12 to 15 years in software licensing for my clients.
And
over to Carl.
And I'm Carl Godson. So I've been doing software licensing, obviously predominantly Microsoft, but all the other wonderful vendors as well for over 15 years, living and breathing the never-ending licensing changes. Seems like a lot more vendors these days are jumping on the Microsoft bandwagon of change all the time, whenever they want, and as much as possible. The last 10 years of that 15 at Datacom, and every time you've hated a licensing model change, I can promise I've hated it more. Okay. So we'll start off with some of the common pitfalls when it comes to renewal minefields. Hidden costs, budget surprises. Auto renewals of unwanted software can burn through your budget that's potentially or probably needed elsewhere. Things like reinstatement fees, which I think these days happen to be a vendor's second favorite thing behind, price rises blamed on foreign exchange rates. With SaaS renewals becoming a bigger portion of IT budget spend, we also see these unfortunately being having greater increases when compared to sort of traditional software maintenance renewals.
One of the areas that we wanted to share with you is some of those pitfalls that are, I guess, growing. On your screen, you'll see an example of a clause that we see in some of the contracts more and more. And I'll give you a little example. A couple of weeks ago, I had a client that called me up and said, look, we've decided to go another way with our software, but we've just been told that we we are being forced to renew. So this is a clause that we're seeing more and more come into software contracts, particularly with SaaS, whereby it will state in the EULA that you need to give a certain amount of notice, otherwise it will auto-renew. Not only will it auto-renew, but they have the ability, and you can see it in those red boxes, to increase the fees for each renewal. So you're basically, if you're not careful about the EULAs that you're signing up to, you're basically giving them a blank check. So in this particular case, the client decided that they were going to move to another product. Everything was set. When they went to cancel, it was 55 days, and they were told that it was within the 60-day windows, and they were not able to cancel that renewal. So one of the things that we are advocating for is to really ensure that you are looking at those EULAs and ensuring that you're aware of any of those dates. So we call this the forgotten auto renewal nightmare. Over to you, Kyle.
Thanks, Andy. Some of the other pitfalls include compliance and security holes. So I would say, other than the person from the ATO that keeps texting me about my overdue tax bill every June, I don't think anyone likes sort of those compliance holes or security threats. So too much reliance on one person or a manual process is another sort of negative or pitfall. When an organization is forced to be reactive when it comes to renewals due to minimal notice, you're potentially missing chances to have strategic conversations with IT and other business stakeholders. I'm sure we'd all love to be a lot more proactive in everything we do, but to do so, we need time. These are all issues that most organizations have experienced, or are experiencing right now. So if we flipped all those negative experiences, what would that look like for you as an organization? There would be no surprises. Your budget would get to where you would want it to go, and when you wanted it to go there. There'd be no headaches, or hopefully even no nightmares, preferably when it comes to compliance and security. You'd have clear processes, reporting and forecasting. And for me personally, whenever I've had a choice between headaches and no headaches, I choose the latter. Obviously, unless my wife tells me that I'm wrong in that decision. Next one, sorry. How would we at Datacom sort of achieve this no headache experience for you? Through our systematic approach to renewals, which is scalable. We understand that different vendors have different approaches, and at Datacom we have a defined approach for all different vendors. Some of them obviously the same. It would be nice if they're all the same. Life would be easier. Reducing risks of compliance gaps and security vulnerabilities. By avoiding lapses in software licensing or SaaS. Potentially some of it's hard stop, loss of access to end users, so end user experience. Collaboration between internal teams, so that's your internal teams and all the stakeholders, IT procurement, IT teams themselves, and other business units, as well as Datacom and the particular software vendors that we're dealing with those renewals. Providing the right decisions are made in advance, and the expected amount of budget is used for each renewal at the expected time is obviously what we aim for all our customers. This would result in fewer surprises, fewer lapses, and more control, and obviously less headaches, and hopefully no nightmares. So we move on to showing you an example of our renewal calendar. You can see that it shows vendor name, renewal month, and previous cost. Should you have purchased it in these examples from Datacom, this will automatically show up in your calendar. This would give you plenty of time to discuss internally with all your stakeholders. Something that this would help with is, I might just talk about a completely made up scenario here. maybe a vendor called Broadcom might limit licensing options, enforce minimums, and be all around difficult to deal with. So if you had long advance notice of that next renewal coming up, it might give you time to plan for, well, explore other options, plan those alternatives or the alternative selected and actually, get it deployed so you can avoid that renewal again. But once again, that's definitely completely made up.
Sorry, Kyle, I'll just add in there. So this renewal calendar came born from clients that basically said that they were struggling to see what was coming. And then they'd get to periods like June, end of financial year, and suddenly they've got 30 key renewals and they don't have the capacity to undertake them all. So what we're trying to do here is give you time, right? We can provide clients with this in any format in terms of bringing into your procurement systems or your ITAM systems if you have it, but it's allowing you to plan those conversations. And one of the things that we do as part of this is we are also working quite a whiles out as well. So working 90 to 120 days out. So not only do you have a calendar so that you can work that time out, you're also getting prompts from us as well.
Thanks, Sandy. We're also sort of getting great feedback from our customers on something that we've introduced, relatively recently, which is our monthly software licensing update. Provides general information from vendors within the market or, based on our experience. It covers off things like price changes, gotchas that could be dodged because we've seen the gotcha experience somewhere else and we've, negotiated or explored it and avoided it. So obviously that work all done. So sharing that knowledge, so you can get to sort of a similar or an appropriate decision for yourself without doing all the hard yards. Licensing model changes. I think Codify also mentioned Microsoft is doing it all the time. They have always been doing it. They will never stop doing it, making licensing model changes. Maybe one day we'll get a positive one, but until then, we'll just sort of keep you updated through our monthly licensing update. Sorry, next one. And our approach. So every organization we understand is different and can vary at how different they are from one organization to another. You could be a council right next to another council, next region over, and be vastly different. So we understand that, and our approach is definitely, and the opposite to a one size fits all. We don't take that approach. We listen to you as customers, and we make changes that are possible to provide an experience that sort of meets your needs.
One of the key things I like to say to our customers is even though there's lots of advocates for best practice isn't always the right practice for every organisation. So for us, it really matters to, as Kyle said, meet you where you are. So if you need some additional support, then we can provide that. If you've got a strong procurement team with ample resources and all the budget in the world, then we take a step back. I'd like to meet a few more of those though. And we're going to go through over the next couple of slides just some examples of how we tier our services to, as we said, meet you where you are. Okay, this is me. We've talked a lot about software renewals. This is an area near and dear to my heart because the last 10 years of my life has been spent in software asset management. So helping all sorts of organizations run their renewals, maintain compliance and so forth. And even though in many cases from a SAM perspective, we are finding hundreds of thousands of dollars of licensing savings, the thing that we got the most gratitude for was helping them with their renewals. It's one of those things, when you get that that question, oh, what keeps you up at night? Renewals is something that keeps people up at night because if they don't do it on time, as Kyle mentioned earlier, they could lose access to their software. It could be the CEO that, or a key counsellor that is losing access to key information. It could stop services to your citizens. So what we've done here is introduce a couple of levels of service. Our normal service for most clients that there's no fees is that we are running that renewal calendar. We're providing that as often as customers require it. We're providing a structured process 90 to 120 days out, making sure we are highlighting those auto renewal windows so that councils have the ability to identify if they want to go forward, and they've also got the time to go back to their stakeholders and say, hey, Datacom have just provided us with this quote. Do you want to go forward? Are there any changes? It's grown by, well, I'd like to say 3% with CPI, but let's face it, that's a joke. It's now, I think I was reading 8 to 15%. More with SaaS and a little bit less if it's software maintenance. But again, that's all changing, right? The world has just changed so much. But the next level over is also assisting our organisations with renewals that Datacom doesn't manage. Again, just facilitating that process a little bit more. And then we go to that third level where we're actually entrenched in the organisation and helping them run their renewal service. And that takes many shapes and forms.
Thanks, Andy. Sort of moving on from that, and the guys at Codify touched on before is Datacom's approach to managing Microsoft enterprise agreements. We're talking about enterprise agreements specifically here. Obviously, we're also a tier 1 CSP, so whatever suits. Obviously, due to the never-ending changes that I mentioned before from vendors like Microsoft, partners like Datacom have to make changes, adapt or die. So now we've introduced sort of 3 tiers of support for our enterprise agreement customers, starting off with this foundation support. So bronze, it's low touch, it meets all contractual and compliance obligations with Microsoft. That's from your perspective and from our perspective as a partner. We assist with building bill of materials when it comes to true ups, processing license reconciliation orders for reservations made throughout the year. What does your anniversary order look like, and then the same type of thing as you lead up to a renewal of an enterprise agreement. It also includes what we touched on before, our renewal calendar and monthly software update. So then if we move on to silver, this includes obviously everything from bronze and adds things like, a dedicated licensing consultant. So there would be myself in Queensland, and then obviously someone else in a few of the other states. We would cover off things like quarterly meetings, with you. Obviously, if you're relatively close to metro area, those could obviously be in person. During those meetings we provide advice and modeling, maybe touch on things that were of particular interest to you that you saw in one of our monthly updates, and we provide and go through modeling based on changes within the business, projects coming up, and do multiple scenarios, modeling of scenarios as you lead up to a renewal or an anniversary, because obviously with a lot of online services or subscription-based modeling, you can make changes from year to year quite drastically as your business sort of needs change. Then if we move on to gold, we do things like, and it's obviously not an exhaustive list of what's included, but an in-depth analysis of your Windows and SQL Server licensing environment. Do you have a presence within Azure? Almost everyone seems to these days. Are you paying for the licensing within the straight from license included in Azure billing? Obviously, there's potentially more suitable, more cost-effective ways to leverage things like Azure Hybrid Benefit and reduce the cost of that for VMs that aren't changing much or changing at all throughout a 1 or 3 year period. We have agreed SLAs. We provide Azure billing analysis. So we have a tool that we can use that can provide some great insights. Obviously, Microsoft has some level of cost management, but they're probably not in the game of making sure customers can reduce their Azure invoice each month. So, we can potentially assist with that. It also includes a bucket of hours for ad hoc advisory services. So, you let us know what you need, and we can address it. We've obviously got a lot of team members with a lot of experience in this area, in this particular vendor. Lucky for us or unlucky for us, but we do have that experience. So that covers off gold for us. That gold tier. We also, some I think Codify mentioned that the standard level of service that you get from Microsoft, and hopefully not everyone has experienced it, but if you've called Microsoft support with the standard level of support and no additional support agreement, the experience can, I don't know how I would explain it, less than ideal, probably a good way to professionally describe it. But Data can provide something similar to, you may have heard of Unified or Premier Support, to our agreement. You can leverage that support agreement. We can, you can purchase a bucket of hours, and that can give you some true paths to, a means of escalating and receiving some true level of support, where when you do escalate something, there is more eyes on it, there's more attention, and things actually progress.
Okay, this is our final slide. So we're just leaving you with some, I guess, scary kind of thoughts here. So 76% of companies over-license their software to avoid audit penalties. I think Codify alluded to this as well. Don't overspend because you're fearful. Knowledge is power. So we strongly encourage you to understand your environment, work with somebody that understands your business and will help you understand that. And 85% of organizations don't fully comply with their software license agreements. These agreements are getting more and more complex, and it is really important. I know it's really tempting to just click through those EULAs, but it is really, really important. You'll find things like that renewal term, and somebody did ask in the questions whether it's legal. Well, yes. And unfortunately, it's you can apply to the vendor and have your partner also apply, but you have ultimately signed an agreement and accepted the EULA when you've procured the license. I encourage you to talk with your legal team if that's what you'd like to do, but what we strongly encourage is ensure that you read those and have options in place to look at that prior to those anniversary periods, and all of them are different. We've seen 30, 60, 90. I haven't seen anything more than 90, but it could be. Other license agreement terms might include things like Nitro. Nitro say that if you're not on the latest software, you're not in compliance with their agreement, and they will not provide you with any support. We had a client a little while ago who moved from Adobe to Nitro, saved a bucket load of money. The users were absolutely satisfied, so everything was going well. They were there on the platform for about 2 years when they really started to feel the pain of having to upgrade everyone at least once per year or twice per year. This was a multinational organization with thousands of users, but it became so problematic that they actually moved back to Adobe, even though it meant spending a lot more money. It was spending more money on licensing, but saving money in other ways for the business, right? So sometimes, a licensing win may not be a win for the rest of the business, and we're here to help guide you through and talk you through some of our experiences with our customers and, the things that we know from our vendors as well. But with that, I think we're closing off the presentation and open to any questions that anyone may have.
Excellent. Thank you very much, both to Codify and Datacom, for your presentations this morning. As you said, Sandy, there was only one question so far, but this is where normally people start popping questions into the Q&A portal. So for our wonderful attendees, please feel free to go ahead and ask any questions that you may have. I have a question, actually, while everybody's popping their questions in. All of our customers, our councils are trying to do more with less, always. Do you have any tips on how to keep providing awesome internal and external ICT systems, but trying to save a buck where they can?
Do you want
Let's
to
go
say
to, yeah, let's go to David first, and then back across to Datacom, please.
Sure. There's lots of levers you can pull, and the guys from Datacom talked about a few of those. Our bread and butter is doing Azure CSP. So I can talk sort of fairly authoritatively to that, or Alex probably could do more so than I do. But there are some obvious things that were mentioned before about being able to reserve virtual machines. If you've got machines that you know that are going to be around running a line of business application for a period of time, you can commit to purchasing that over a sustained period of time, and Microsoft will give you a corresponding discount. There's a few lesser known tricks, like for example, you can buy Windows licenses on subscription basis. So if you're small enough that you don't have software assurance kicking around, there are ways to procure Windows licenses on a subscription basis, and that has the net effect of, if you've got a virtual machine that say was costing you $2,000 a month, that might knock 40% out of the cost of that machine by buying that license on subscription. The other thing that we see a lot of as well, and I guess in terms of doing more with less, there's a real balancing act from Microsoft that you have to do around software licensing. If you look, almost all their products will come with a 20% discount if you commit to an annual or greater term. And so the challenge that people have is certainly in some of our fast-moving customers outside local government, but if you look at retail or places that are seasonal, is you have to do this balancing act between, well, I've got 1,000 people now, but I think I might have 800 people in 6 months. So how much can I commit into the future in terms of buying these licenses on a 1 or 3 year basis, and how much do I keep flexibly? And the right answer is sort of try and make an informed judgment about that, and buy a proportion of your licenses on a monthly basis, which attract that 20% premium, but they can be removed at any time on a saving basis. And then the ones that you're absolutely sure that you're going to need in a year, then you would definitely commit. In terms of them, the 3 year licensing terms from Microsoft, I wouldn't bother looking at that. There's no money to be saved. There is insulation against future price rises. Obviously, if you sort of smelt it, coming in the breeze that there was going to be a price rise in 18 months, and maybe committing for 3 years, even though there's no financial benefit over 1 year, might be a prudent thing to do. I don't know if you got anything to add to that, Alex.
Oh, that's pretty much everything I would have said about that too. Yeah.
And Sandy or Kyle?
Kyle, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. Things like reviewing your actual usage of, if we talk Microsoft, or it sort of rolls onto any other vendors. The consumption or the actual usage of workloads within a plan that you might be licensed for. So I think the guys at Codify mentioned it early on in their presentation around, assessing and tools that can be used to assess the usage. So, it's obviously the vendor's best interest to, hey, let's standardize this, make licensing simple for you. Do everything on Microsoft 365 E5. Great. That's, $1,000 a year per user. Probably not suitable for all users within most organizations. So, assess what profiles maybe exist within your organization. Is there any right sizing or optimization or even reharvesting of licenses that can be done because licenses haven't been used for a while? So, sort of big culprits when it comes to Microsoft Visio and Project. Yeah, I definitely need it. Okay, we've had a look at your usage. You opened it twice for a minute at a time over the last 6 months. So do you really need it? Things like implementing. We take it back, and you only get it if you ask for it and seek approval from your manager. Because if you ask someone simply if they need it, then, like I said before, they'll just put their hands up and say they need it. Other things like awareness, giving data upon like Datacom awareness of sort of all the software vendors and solutions that are deployed within your organization, to get an understanding of is there crossover? Are you essentially double upping in bits and pieces? And where there's double up, can you consolidate that vendor into another vendor via some sort of upgrade or add on? Things like that. I don't know if you add anything, Sandy.
Yeah, look, all the suggestions have been really great, and just to take that a little bit further, I mentioned that I was in software asset management, so our role in that kind of side of things is to optimize, right, and to save money wherever we can, and to make sure that we're identifying risk. So as much as you don't want to hear it, you kind of do. So whether you do I would strongly encourage you on a periodic basis, and that might be every 3 years or every 5 years or every year, to have your Windows and SQL environments looked at, and to see if, one, you're compliant, because you don't want to find that out in an audit. My catch cry personally and for our team is no surprises. Whether it's good, bad, or ugly, you want to know about it before the vendor does, right? So do your Windows and SQL audit. You'll either find savings or you're going to find risk. Either way, deal with it, right? If it's a risk that you don't want to deal with, put it on your risk register. Make sure that the senior management knows about it and makes that executive decision to move forward with it. I have seen hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings. So just by moving, all the dev machines into a consolidated environment can save lots of money, right? So really looking at that, but that is an area that you will save money, or look, if you get a tick of approval, you're doing really well, right? Another area that we always find savings in is Microsoft 365 profiling. So the amount of clients that we see who have given licenses to shared mailboxes and things like that, right? There again, get that check done to see if there is savings to be had. I don't know of a single one of those that we did that didn't find some kinds of savings. Now, you may choose not to enact those savings because sometimes there's a cost to actually managing different profiles and that, but it's good to know about and make that informed choice. The other thing that Kyle mentioned was Visio and Project, and making sure that you're harvesting those. Think of it as renting, right? So Visio and Project, often people will need it because they're on a project and they open the project plan and they think they need a license. They may do, or they need to create a Visio diagram. But the chances of them needing it every day for their role are minimal, unless they're in a project management or such role. So consider the idea of renting software, and it may not be for everything. It might be for Creative Cloud, except for the marketing department. It might be for your Visio and Project. They're the kind of typical ones that I would see it for. But if you are going to go down that path, ensure that you publish what the plan is. I did have a client that had hundreds of thousands of dollars in Project and Visio rolled out, but they didn't feel they could take it away from anyone because they hadn't told them about it, right? So make sure you're doing that communication as well. I think there was a question there around perpetual versus subscription. Is that right, Emma?
I think Heike was actually just posting a little
okay.
key facts and insights about perpetual contracts. So thank you, Heike. And David had one other thing to add.
Yeah, just another observation as well that is something that I sort of have to keep in mind. Much of what we've spoken about today is really at the pointy end of procurement, and nothing's more near and dear to a procurement officer's heart than saving money. But you do also have to weigh that up against risk. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because the biggest lever that Microsoft uses to segment their different licenses is normally around security features, right? And so you have to be mindful that if you're paying a few thousand, several thousand, whatever it is, dollars a month for a head of employee to do a thing within your council, if there is a quantifiable reduction in the cyber risk profile for that employee, why are you concerned about whether it's $50 or $80 or $40 for the licenses that provide those features or not? Now, we often lose sight of that because it is very confronting to be presented with an invoice for $200,000 or $1 million worth of licensing for the next year. But if we think about the total employment cost of an employee, so that's your salary, and then you add your super on top of that, but then you've got to give them a computer that costs several $1,000s and a desk and square meters of office space. I do sometimes have to sort of snap our clients back into reality to say, given that cost profile, why are we having this discussion about this tiniest sliver on the cost of that employee when we are talking about a material risk to your cyber profile as an org? So it's just something else to keep in your mind.
Yep, it's a very, very good point. Well, we are sliding into only having 5 minutes to go. There don't appear to be any additional questions in the question and answer portal, but I am sure that if any of our attendees this morning have any questions, you guys would be more than happy to assist them if they reach out directly. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for attending this morning and for Codify and Datacom for being part of our webinar. As I said at the beginning of the webinar, this session is being recorded and we will send out a copy of the recording and also the slides. So feel free to reach out if local buy can be of any assistance or any of our 2 wonderful suppliers who joined us this morning. Unless, Dan, you have anything else you would like to interject, I will give everybody approximately 4 minutes of their day back.
Just quickly, I just once again just want to thank David and Alex, Sandy and Carl for their insights, for essentially the life of the procuring of licenses, from the market analysis to the contract management during the life of the contract, but also the considerations when renewing, auto-renewing, or whatever it might be. I think it's been great from my point of view, but also hopefully from our councils and other customers here today. So just once again, thank you. And likewise, in addition to our wonderful suppliers, if there's anything that I can assist with regard to the ICT panel, please reach out to me and I'm happy to assist.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of Thursday.
Thanks
everyone.
Daniel.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.